What up, guys and gals? If you enjoy FunAhead TV and you want to help out the channel, if you want to play a big role in helping to make sure that super sweet projects like this keep coming down the pipeline, head on over to FunAheadTV.com and pick yourself up some merch. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Let's go ahead and get back to putting this engine together.
Rippin', tearin', the rippin' and the tearin'.
Now, in the last episode, we tore this engine down to where it is currently. Basically, took all the stuff up the top and we disassembled the cylinder heads to the point of getting access to the timing chain guides. So the engine is torn down exactly as far as we're going to take it, and now we can begin putting things back together. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into this thing, shall we? So off camera, I've already gone ahead and cleaned up all the mating surfaces for the valve covers and then cleaned underneath the valve covers so that we can reset the whole area back to 0 for installing our brand new parts. I've also gone ahead and cleaned up the intake manifolds. Those, of course, were very dirty on both the inside and outside. You're always gonna get some level of oil coming through the PCV system, regardless of the fact that you have an air oil separator, and having your intake apart is a great excuse to go ahead and get all that old dirt and oil out of there. Even though cleaning stuff can be monotonous, check out how satisfying it can be. This is our intake plenum right here, and if you remember, this thing was just covered in dirt and oil residue. It was nasty. And now, look how freaking delicious this thing looks. Inside and out, this thing is spotless. So, by the end of this episode, we're gonna have this engine completely reassembled and staged back there so that we can have it ready to put it back up in this super sweet budget base model Boxster. We do have one little bit of cleaning left to do that I do want to go ahead and show you guys because I think you're gonna find it pretty interesting. We need to take off the sump and look in there to see how much plastic from those timing chain guides is still down in there. Now, if you remember from the last episode, we took the engine apart and analyzed every little part that we took out of it, especially the very critical ones that are the reason for this entire engine project. And timing chain guides are basically at the forefront of that list. And we saw that the VarioCam pads for both banks were in shambles. When those timing chain guides break down that much, that material has to go somewhere. And more often than not, it ends up right back in the bottom of the sump. Bunch of 10mm bolts up and around the perimeter of it. I'm gonna zip zap, patty whack, smack a chicken bone those off real quick, and then we'll take a look. Okay, now I got all these off. Oh yeah, there's still quite a bit of oil in here. Holy cow. But once you pry it off, then it literally just pops right off. Oh my. Oh my. As somewhat expected, we're finding some bits. Oh my gosh. So when you look right in the oil pickup right here, there is some RTV for one, which is kind of surprising, but also there's a lot of timing chain guide bits right on the screen in there. It's basically exactly what I was saying. Anytime you get a big bit breaking off one of those timing chain guides, well, it ends up in the sump. It's not gonna make its way through that screen right there, and it just ends up kind of being stuck there. And then in addition to the bits we see on the screen right there, well, obviously we saw some bits down in the bottom of the sump as well. Now, aside from timing chain guide bits, I mean, everything looks pretty clean. I will end up getting a light and shining it up in there at the crank. We are able to see several big ends of connecting rods in there. We're not gonna be able to see much, but at least we'll be able to kind of make sure that nothing is super glaring and weird looking. What do you say we take this screen off real quick and just see exactly what's up in that thing? Okay, now I went ahead and set up a little clean station here back in the workshop so that we can analyze all these timing chain bits best we possibly can. These bits right here were on the inside of this little ring that goes around the oil pickup tube. So here's a closer look at everything that was sucked up to this oil pickup screen. So as you can see, we've definitely got some RTV. Wow, that's a big piece of RTV. So that's all the RTV. All right, then other than that, it looks like we've got timing chain guide bits. Dude, look how freaking huge this piece is. There's so many just tiny little pieces of timing chain guide stuck to this thing. All right, I think I've got it all. So we kind of have a blast radius here, so I apologize, but this was everything that was in this little screen on the oil pickup right there. Now, of course, to be clear, we expected there to be some level of junk on the oil pickup screen. That's why I went ahead and took the sump off in the first place. Because with how broken down some of those timing chain guides were, obviously that stuff has to go somewhere, and those big bits definitely are not making it through this screen onto the oil filter. Oh, there's even one hiding back here. Hey, add to the blast zone. Here's a better look at all this. Hopefully it's not too hard to differentiate the oil stains on the paper towel with the timing chain guide bits, but yeah, as you can see, There's a lot. It does kind of look like this sump has been off before, and the RTV that is remaining on that flange around the sump is kind of consistent with what we just saw in this pickup. So that's probably where it came from. But dang, somebody nearly Subaru'd this freaking engine to death. Sick burn. All right, well, that was satisfying and fun to see just how many of the little bits of timing chain guide there were in this pickup. I'm gonna go ahead and finish cleaning up that sump. We'll get it put back together, and then we can truly start reassembling this engine. Let's get to it. Oil pan is all back together, bundled up. We've got the pickup tube nice and torqued down. Everything is good to go there. It is now time to begin the marathon of getting this engine put back together. We're gonna start by doing the cylinder heads first, and then we'll end by putting the top of the engine back together. For now, I'm gonna start with bank 2 because I'm just going to put everything back together in reverse order that I took it apart. So as you can see, I already went ahead and put the oil pump back on. And of course, before doing that, I had to put our brand new timing chain guides down in the engine for bank 2 because of course, the whole reason we took this off in the first place was so we could get access to the bolts that hold those timing chain guides in place, with the exception of that one. I also went ahead and put our new thermostat, our low temperature thermostat, on the engine as well. Fun fact, this engine actually already had a low temperature thermostat, but I kind of feel like it was getting hung up, and it seemed like it was taking a long time for the engine to warm up. So it's never a bad idea to just go ahead and replace the thermostat anyway. And lastly, on the back of the engine, or front, whichever way you want to think about it, we've of course got our brand new IMS bearing and flange in place, and our brand new IMS chain tensioner in place, because obviously we need all of that bundled up and taut in order to put all of this stuff together, because we're literally timing the engine. We can't have slack in one of the 5 chains. If you missed the video about the intermediate shaft bearing explanation and installation, please go back and watch that, but we're not gonna cover the install in this reassembly video. Well, it is officially that time, boys and girls. Let's go ahead and get our brand new VarioCam pads installed, at least for the Bank 2 VarioCam solenoid. Just as a before-after comparison, this is what we were working with. This is what it should look like. Now, of course, the color is different because they updated the material for these to make them more durable. Clearly, they were having issues with these, with them getting a little bit pitted, so pitted. But color aside, yeah, this was once perfectly smooth, and see, now it's not. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and get these installed onto the VarioCam solenoid. Remember that one of them is oil fed, and it's the one that has the 2 little holes in the top of it. The other one has no holes in it.
Because of the way it is.
And you can see there's also a place for an O-ring to go on the back side of it. And you can tell really quickly and easily which side this goes on when you look at this solenoid, because, well, here's the oil hole. And when you look at the other side, no oil hole.
Because of the way it is.
Alrighty, let's go ahead and get this set in there. Cool, there's our O-ring. And here, boom, is our brand spanking new oil-fed VarioCam guide. Let's do the same thing here. Just a note, by the way, don't be worried if these fit slightly loosely. As you can see, this one is loose, but consider the fact that there is a chain that's going to wrap around this and always be curling this thing around. Once you get the chain up and around this thing, it is no big deal. It doesn't matter that one of these will fit slightly loosely. It, as you can see, cannot go anywhere. Now, I have multiple videos on doing this process. I'm gonna go ahead and not cover that in super fine detail in this video, but do me a favor, go ahead and watch those videos if you have any question on how to do this process in fine detail. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and get this Bank 2 cylinder head put back together, shall we?
Score! Wow! Look at this. This is an Aspen.
Because of the way it is.
Score! Score!
Aspen.
Wow!
Look at this.
Score! Wow!
Aspen. Because of the way it is.
Score! Wow! Look at this. This is an Aspen.
Because of the way it is.
Score! Score!
Aspen.
Wow!
Look at this.
Score! Wow!
Aspen.
Because the way it is.
All right, check it out. We have Bank 2 cylinder head reassembled. Cams are in it, everything's timed. We've got the valve cover torqued down. We need to turn the engine 360 degrees to get it into Bank 1 top dead center. Right now it's in Bank 2 top dead center. We'll do the full 720 degree check after we finish bank 1, but for now, we just need to make sure that at least bank 2 turns without completely binding and feeling like crap. So let's cue the intense music and turn this thing 360 degrees. Alrighty, now, unlocking the crank for the very first time since getting bank 2 completely in time. So, I'm fighting compression, by the way. All 6 spark plugs are in. Fighting a lot of compression, but everything feels very smooth. There we go. In between compression strokes there. Boom. We just turned it, whatever that was, just under 360 degrees from the 0T to the U6 position, and everything felt really good. Now, time to flip this engine, like that, and go ahead and put together bank 1.
Many minutes later.
Well, friends, boom, and there it is. Bank 1 is all put back together. Officially, the entire engine is, theoretically, all together and back in time. Well, at least as far as the cylinder heads go. But we're about to find out right now with our 720 degree check. Why do we do this check? Just as a quick reminder. Well, this is a 4-stroke engine. The crank has to turn 720 degrees, AKA 2 full rotations for every 1 rotation of the camshafts in order to check and make sure that we're not having valves hit pistons or something really wonky. And even though I've done this many times, it's always just a good sanity check. You don't want to go full hog, putting the engine completely back together and back up in the car and turning the key without doing this, because what if, you know? Everyone's human, everyone makes mistakes. Cue the intense music yet again. Boom. That was 360 degrees right there. Coming up to like the last 20, 30 degrees here. Boom, we did it. 720 degree check has passed. Success. We can now officially say this engine is in time. Not a single valve smacked a piston. Gosh, I'm good. No, I'm really not. I just followed the procedure. Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and pull the pin out of this engine stand, so for you OCD types, the engine will now be level once again. There. Better? Good? All right?
A few moments later.
So we officially have everything from like here down on the engine. I just went ahead and put the spark plugs and coil packs in place. We have all of these small rubber caps on the end of cylinder heads in place. So the cylinder heads are actually officially good to go. Now it's time to begin kind of the laborious task of putting all of the auxiliary stuff that goes on the top of the engine back in place. Well, okay, friends, we have the top of the engine officially put back together. It's now time to go ahead and slap some new parts in our transmission really quickly in preparation for mating the engine and transmission back up. A few of the primary wear components that we have to replace are the little pivot point for the release arm fork, the throwout bearing, and the pivot point for, again, the little release arm fork. I'm not going to replace the fork itself, which I don't know where I just put that. I totally set it down in the other room. I'm not going to replace the fork just because, oh, it's right here, literally freaking right in front of my face. So I'm not going to replace this. I don't know why people always replace it, and I've definitely been guilty of that before too, but it is literally like a 1/4-inch steel. Sure, this thing has like a few little wear marks where like the throwout bearing sits on it and like where it pivots at the bottom, but like these things can absolutely just go ahead and be reused. But you can see, hopefully I can get this in the camera enough. For example, this pivot point definitely shows some wear. For example, this side of it is much more shallow than this side, just because that release arm has done this up against this pivot point thousands and thousands of times, and over time it just kind of wears into it. Here you can kind of see it a little bit better on this particular side of it. And same with this, you know, no doubt the rubber on the tip of this little pivot point here has worn down a little bit, but nonetheless, these are two very cheap parts and you just replace them whenever you do your clutch. So I've gone ahead and cleaned up the inside of the belt housing a little bit. You don't need to make this look like a freaking clean room or the inside of the Taj Mahal. I just got a lot of the dust out of the inside that was from the clutch plate wearing down. That's absolutely all you need to do. From here, I'm gonna go ahead and take some just anti-seize. I always use copper anti-seize for this. I don't really know why. I don't know if I have like a particular rhyme or reason. This is just what I've always done. So I throw this on the splines of the input shaft for the transmission, just so that it slides into the clutch that much more easily. And then I go ahead and throw it on the little sleeve here as well, just because this is the sleeve that the throwout bearing slides on every single time you push the clutch. Okay, now that we have that more than sufficiently coated, I am just gonna go ahead and just wipe off some of the excess because we don't want any of this to end up making its way onto the clutch plate, obviously, but I just wanted to lube up those splines. Now I'm gonna go ahead and throw in our new pivot point. So I just threw my little pivot point down here and the little rocker down in place. And I'm gonna just use some brake parts lubricant on those just to keep those moving real nice. I'm gonna clip in our throwout bearing first. And as you can see, this literally just sits in there. Like, it's got little clips on the back of it, but it is not substantially in there. It more or less just sets into it. So we're gonna slide this over. Can't freaking see. There. Now, as you can see, we've got this clip sitting up and around our throwout arm here. Our throwout bearing is nicely resting on the throwout arm or clipped into it, and this is the tube that it rides in and out on whenever you're driving around normally. So we're just gonna, boom, set this as is, and this thing is officially ready to be mated up back to our engine. So I think it's officially time we can take our engine back off the engine stand, set it back on the roller cart. We need to replace the rear main seal still, then we can replace the dual mass flywheel, clutch, and pressure plate. Then it will literally be all set and ready to be mated back up to this transmission. Then the next step is starting to put it back up in that bad girl. Rear main seal time. As you can see, I've already gone ahead and put the engine on the on my hydraulic table here. Now, I went ahead and drilled a hole into the rear main seal because, believe it or not, this is how you remove these things. These are much, much thicker steel underneath this rubber than you would realize. And you're supposed to use a slide hammer to get these out. So basically, I've drilled a hole so that I can insert this deck screw, which then fits nicely into this adapter for the slide hammer. Boom, slide hammer, as you can see. And then, oh. Okay, take two, because clearly that hole didn't want to hold. You don't want to go in too far, just because your intermediate shaft chain is just behind this. Hey, there we go. And it's probably hard to tell just by looking at this, but like I said, this metal is freaking thick boy thick. And taking this out any other way other than doing this with a slide hammer would be very, very difficult. Anyway, now it's time to do my least favorite procedure, and that is reinstall the new rear main seal. Yeah, let's do it. All right, putting our new seal on. So you can see I've already got the rear main seal on the installation sleeve here. This basically allows for this inner lip that seals to the crank to be able to slip up and over the crank. So I've got this PVC coupler that I utilize for this. It's not the perfect tool. There's very much a special tool for this to get this seal installed just right. But I do use some electrical tape that I've just wrapped around this 50 billion times to kind of utilize as a bumper, just so that once we do get the seal on far enough, one of the sides of this can't like push the seal in unevenly. But even with that, believe you me, no yeah, you can still put it on unevenly. So this is why I cannot stand putting on rear main seals. It's just it's a tedious procedure, and it's very, very easy to mess up. The reason it's so easy to mess up is because, well, they can't be too deep and they can't be too shallow, and they also need to sit perfectly flush with the crank, otherwise they won't seal correctly to it. So it's definitely a touchy procedure. So what I like to use is this little piece of steel, but for utilizing the PVC coupler, it allows me to just kind of hit it more evenly. Already I can tell this thing's freaking going in sideways. So that's fun and cool. So in the event that it does start going in sideways, you can kind of use this as a tool to kind of help it in, like a little punch to kind of get it back to even. So once we're officially off our crank tool, of course we can remove that. So one thing to be aware of, like if you ever do this to your car, right now we're trying to overcome the force or the pushback from this of trying to kind of like, you know, funnel it down into the case halves. Once this outer lip becomes flush with the case halves, then we've effectively funneled it down in, and it's gonna go in way more easily. So you have to be very, very, very aware if you have one particular side of this kind of uneven and it's gone below the surface of the case half, it's gonna just take off and then really quickly want to turn on you. It could take one hit and next thing you know, the whole thing's turned. Anyway, I'm just gonna keep hitting on this for a while, hopefully be able to get this installed nicely, and we'll pick up once I'm done, but basically those are all the tips I have. So yeah, hopefully I can get this thing in. We've got our rear main seal installed exactly how we want it. Now let's go ahead, get the pressure plate, clutch, flywheel all installed, then we can mate these two back up together. Making progress, people, we're making progress.
Score! Wow! Look at this. This is an Aspen.
Because of the way it is.
Score! Score!
Aspen.
Wow!
Look at this.
Score! Wow!
Because of the way it is.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, boys and girls, but I would say that that right there is one beautiful looking sight. If you remember at the very beginning of this episode, we started with the valve covers completely off, cylinder heads completely torn apart, nothing was on the top of this engine, and obviously the transmission was sitting way over there doing whatever it was doing. And now everything is back together. So we're gonna cap this episode off here today because, well, that was our goal. We wanted to get this powertrain completely ready to go back up in the car, and we did that. Next episode, this thing is going back up in that super sweet Silver Sweetie over there, but not only will it be back up in the car, we're gonna do the very first start with it, hopefully all goes well, and then we might even just take it for the first little test drive. What do you think about that? Anyway, if you enjoyed this episode, please do me a huge favor and hit that like button. It helps out my channel immensely. Thank you again for being here today. I appreciate each and every one of you. Yes, I'm looking right at you. I couldn't do this without you guys watching these stupid little videos I make every single week. So thank you all again. Can't say it enough. And I will see you all in next week's video. See ya.
Rippin', tearin'. The rippin' and the tearin'.
Super sweet Silver Sweetie? Huh. That might stick.